you have any idea how to get this into a full screen? Do you know how to get the presentation to go full screen? What version am I running? That's just almost what I wanted. Let's see what happens when I do this. That's good. Okay, the note well will just look like that. Okay, folks, can we settle down? Hello, folks. Welcome. This is the Lime Working Group. If you think you want to be going somewhere else, now is your last opportunity to deplane. My name is Ron. Yeah. My name is. Okay. My name is Ron Bonica. Due to the fact that I didn't take my medication this morning, I'm also Carlos Pignataro. Having a multiple personality issue. This is our note well. Please note it well, and anyone who fails to declare their IPR will be beaten severely about the head and shoulders. Yes. We have a need. Dan King, are you here? Dan offered to be Jabber Scribe. We need a scribe. Thank you very much. Your name? Oh, Noble. Oh, Noble. I didn't recognize you. Sorry. Sorry. I know. I'm in shock. Okay. We have exactly one item on our agenda today. And that item, last time we met, we set a design team loose and asked them to answer some questions for us. The design team has had a 3-month period to work. So, who is presenting on behalf of the design team? Kim? Okay. Kim, I'd ask you to stand inside the pink box so the camera can get you. If people throw fruit, you are allowed to step out of the pink box. Okay. Anyhow, take it away.
We can start. Yeah, my name is Qing Wu. Yeah. Here's the design team report. Actually, when we formed the design team, and Tom Taylor led the discussion, but he is not here. So I will present these slides on behalf of him and all the other design team delegates. Next. So the history for the design team. In the last IETF meeting, we put up a design team to summarize available architecture and model. The reason for that is because in the last meeting, some people doubt maybe there's some other model, candidate model can be using to model OM besides the CFM model. So we formed this design team, and so here the contents of the slides contain 4 parts. The first is the goal and objective of the design team. Second is related to the design team meeting discussion points, and then third point is the summary design team list discussion. I think there's some issue within the list discussion is duplicated to the discussion point from design team meeting. So last we'll draw the conclusion to indicate how to follow up. Next. So what's the objective and goal for this design team? And thanks for the role to see the discussion. we kick off the design team work. I start to try to answer these two questions. The first question is what degree the choice of the line model impact on the line work. The second is can line model be developed as a model agnostic? Here we want to stress line working group is not targeted to develop any new OM protocol. We only focus on develop a new OM model. So in this new OM model, we may introduce some new objects. We identify that common to different OM technology. Next. So we have a 3 design team meeting. In the first design team meeting, we summarize the key points we discussed. For example, what a candidate model we can use as a basis, what common elements we can sort out from various OM technology, and whether OM line model support connection orient or connection list, and how does the line can simplify the operation cost. Next. So based on our investigation, we sort out the 2 models here. One is ultra-V CFM model, another one is RTUT Y.1731 model. And in the MF, they're also using CFM model as a basis, and for the MPL's TTOM, they're using the Y.7231 as a basis. So we basically there's only 2 candidates for line model. Next. So compare the CFM model with the Y.1731 model, and we can see the difference. CFM model only focuses on fault management, but Y.7231 not only support fault management, but also support performance measurement. And compare the terminology used in the CFM and Y.1731, we can see they have equivalent terminology used in different contexts. Yoji, do you have a question?
Hi, Yuji, and from Fujitsu, and regarding one question, could you clarify the terminology or different meaning definition for model here, since in a few slides it's kind of the mixture of the architecture where ME or the MEP and includes as well as its functionalities. So please clarify what do you mean by model here. Thank you.
Here we just survey the existing model, and so terminology we didn't change the meaning of the existing definition of terminology. So I think the common elements we sort out. First, we need to identify a candidate model can be using for the line work, and then we identify the common elements. So I will clarify in the next slides what common elements we sort out. Okay. Next. Here is the common OM function summarized in FC 72, 76. They actually summarize a lot of common function among RTOM, MPLSOM, PFD, and TRIO-OM, and web trapper, and we can see CCCV, path discovery, performance management are common function. So we can use in these common function as a basis to build the line model. Next.
I'm going to take just a second to examine that chart. Okay, I'll come back with questions on it later.
So based on the discussion and the survey, we identify the following common elements. For example, photo domain. The photo domain are referred to the specific area we do the troubleshooting. The testing point are referred to some where we initiate the data plane OM message, where we send the data plane message, which intermediate point are traversed, and also the existing OEM technology actually is layer specific, so they follow the layer modeling. Other common elements, for example, technology type, addressing, and RPC, and the optional elements that we can use, for example, connection or random connection is we can support both, or we support either of them. Another one is the proactive mode and on-demand mode. We can support both, or we can support either of them. Next. So how line model can simplify the operation cost? We have two reasons. The first reason is because we're using netcode. Netcode moves the transaction to the device, so the management complexity can be greatly reduced. Next. The second reason, because operation and management network is very limited when we require OEM across multiple technology. So we need to respect layer boundary. So OEM message should not leak out of the boundary within a layer. So when we do the end-to-end path troubleshooting, and it's very challenging because end-to-end path require multiple network segment, with each segment may support a different technology. Next. So with the line model, how we can simplify the operation cost. Next.
So how does Lime solve this problem of leaking from different layers? I mean, how it is different from what is today? I mean, you have a different layers already, so, I mean, the networks are working as is. So how it is different? Can you please explain a little bit?
This is what we want to clarify here. With the Lime model, actually, network troubleshooting with each layer in each network segment, they can be run separately. But we still honor the layer boundary. And the test result can be represented and reported in a consistent way to the management system. So management system can do the magic job to stitch in different layers, to stitching the troubleshooting results in different layers, and so conform the end-to-end network view of the troubleshooting.
Okay, maybe it's not. Yeah, it's not clear. Maybe maybe later slides make it clear. It's not clear how this will solve the problem, I mean, of leaking, because I mean, if the layers are today, they are already there. If we can solve the problem today, I mean, so maybe I guess your slides may have an explanation later. But at this point, it's not clear to me how this will solve it.
Yeah, this is some issue raised in the design team meeting, but actually the focus is not clarify how to simplify the operation cost, because you want to have clear clarification for this. I think you need to go to solution scope. You need to bring the line model out and then we can clarify how we support this feature.
I think it's a good idea. I'm not, overall, but I'm just saying is the arguments which you're using. I'm not fully convinced that those are the arguments. It's overall probably it will maybe help, I guess.
Yeah. Next. Next. Yeah. So second design team actually canceled. Thanks for Greg providing initial version of the OM comparison. So we compare the RPOM, MPLS-OM, MPLS-TPOM, BFD, and we sort out some common OM function. Next. So this is a table provided by the Greg, and we can see for the RP and MPLs actually. Maintenance endpoint, maintenance intermediate point are implicit supported. Also, we can see for the proactive continuity verification are not supported by the RPOM or by RP-MPLS-OM. So, but also we can see this table. We can see a lot of common function we discussed in the previous slides, like for the domain test point, but we're using different terminology here. Next. So in the third design team meeting, we actually have a lot of debate on how to understand the RP OEM model underdefined. Actually, based on our understanding, yes, RPM model is underdefined, but the line model proposed in the TISA job actually try to address this issue, fill the gap. So we give some argument of, for example, we using maintenance domain neighbor map we can map maintenance domain to the administration domain. We can map to the RP adjustable testing point to justify this. So Greg proposed maybe we need to update the line model proposed in the TISA draft to make sure the line model can well support RPOM. Otherwise, we need, he proposed maybe we have a separate draft to document RPOM model. So we need to ask working chair opinion on this because in the charter we only have one work item to work on the line model. Next. So here is the summary of all the discussion points in the design team manifest. We actually highlight 4 points. The first is about the OEM model analysis table. I think a few things I want to highlight is in this OEM model analysis table, actually we identify some OEM requirements, but most of OEM requirements is beta plan requirements. But how these requirements relate to the management plan or relate to it's not very clear. But I think for the line working group, the most key requirements we want to address is provide a consistent reporting representation across different layers. Also, we want to highlight is because we have a lot of discussion, we think some feature may belong to the basic model, some feature may belong to the model extension, technology-specific model extension. So we roughly agree line model should be superset of the function in any specific layers. Also, we discussed the commonality between the RP layer and other OEM technology. And I think we generally agree the commonality between various technologies except the RPOM. And also we justify using the MD map in the RP or RP-MPL's network does no harm. Actually, the benefit is provide consistent reporting representation, especially in some end-to-end troubleshooting scenarios. Also, Deepak gave 2 good points. Is for this kind of CFM model elements, actually they belong to the management plan. It's not OEM specific information. So you will fill this kind of information into the line model, but not change the data plan OEM protocols. Also, we discuss whether base model need to support P2P or P2MP. Actually, we think for the basic model, we can have we can define some technology type, but we can have an empty technology type in the basic model, and but we can define the P2P, P2MP in the model extension, because we believe these belong to the specific OEM technology.
Okay, and Yuji again, and thank you for the summary of the design team discussion, and also editor of the TX8 or draft RAM, where wrote gap analysis for layer 2 or layer 0, 1, 2, and my suggestion for RIME is that maybe the commonality between IP or IP APS OM and Ethernet APS OM and it should be more clarified as Greg pointed out the previous slide, since layer 0, 1, 2 OM architecture or model, already we have a very stable model architecture as defined in the draft round or the gap analysis here. So maybe, and my suggestion is we have more study for IP-based OM, and we should find the commonality or the difference between IP-based OM models and the CFM models 57031 MPLS OM. This is my suggestion to the LIME working group. Thank you.
I think you talk about the layer 1, layer 2. I think if you identify some elements, common elements that can be defined in a base model, you can bring up.
Again, and layer 0, 1, 2, and we have already clear the model, or how do we say, and model as defined in the, for example, ITUT A74.1, A052, or the AD152. It's draft. And now here, and ITUT or the ONF is have trying to the more information model for the common architectures, and here we are trying to more generic map architecture for information model here. Maybe this would be the good input to the LIME working group. However, this is only limited to the layer 0, 1, 2. So the problem is how do we deal with the layer 3 OM and in junction with layer 0, 1, 2. This is the breaking new study point for LIME working group here. So my suggestion is again, and maybe commonality between IP-OM and Ethernet MPLS OM should be more discussed, and we should find what to do here. This is my suggestion.
I think
every quarter we only have to look into ITF or I think last ITF we got a comment that we should only look into ITF OM, no other layer.
By the way, please state your names at the mic so you can...
Greg Mirsky Erickson. Yes, I understand that their interest to do generic OEM model of everything, but it is probably first we need to develop model for IETF OEM or technologies that IETF created and has access, and then we can work with their MEF, IEEE, ITU to try to do it, because before we start flying, we need to start working. That was the rationale, but I agree that it's really might be somewhere in the future.
On this Greg's point, and maybe, and we have a lot of reference and defining ITUT or ONF, or and maybe IEEE. So, yeah, the point is IETF, what is IETF OM, and maybe IP-based OM is the maybe key element for the OM model. This is my comment here. Thank you.
Iftikhar Infinera. So actually, I had a similar question. So if we're just dealing with one layer, so I thought that the idea is to actually go across, have a generic model, multiple layers, which is great, right? So maybe you can, come up with the one, one functionality, and maybe you can apply different layers, right? So it would be a great idea, but looks like just limiting yourself to the scope to the IP layer. So then it's actually is very narrow. I don't see a value then.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know.
Mike.
Oh, okay. Then I'll leave there.
No, I probably was not clear enough. Not IP particular, but technologies that IETF developed. So it will be TRIL, it's IP, it's MPLS, MPLS TP. But we will not go into Ethernet or OTN or TDM or wavelength switching, because these technologies are controlled by other standard defining organizations. It is possible for us to work with them on realigning, and we'll definitely look at their model, but I know that there are many organizations, for example, MEF defined their model for the carrier Ethernet. So we would not try to redefine the model for them.
So Benoit Clay speaking as the responsibility here. It would help people if they would read the charter, right? Because the charter is very clear. Okay, let me do this in order, and let me read. The line working group is not chartered to work on information data model specific to any data plane or forwarding plane technology that is developed outside of the IETF. Full stop. Now, it does not mean, and as you did rightly in design team, that we should not look at CFM or the ITU1 to have like a consistent terminology, to get consistent model to start with. That's a big difference. The second reason why people should read the charter is the third bullet point there, is line task to define a new OEM protocol, get guidance. The charter says the working group will not develop any new OEM protocols. Full stop.
I guess my response is that I mean, I don't know what's the problem we're trying to solve there.
Let me read the charter. This work will enable consistent configuration, reporting, and presentation for the OEM mechanisms used to manage a network, regardless of the layers and technologies, including management mechanism to facilitate better mapping between information reported from OEM mechanisms that operate in different network layers. This is what we do. If this is not clear, you let us know, which is fine, right? But
so I guess it's only limited to IP, because the reality is a lot of OEM are developed, right? So that's in that context, I'm saying is it like
Okay. Do you recognize MPLS as a data plane technology? Of course. Okay, then applicable to MPLS as well.
Could maybe I can add some clarifying words here?
Well, I'm just going to be a petulant departing AD here and say this discussion is exceptionally frustrating. You come to a working group meeting because you're interested in what the Charter says that the working group is going to work on. And the Charter really does. It even gives examples of the data planes and the OEM technologies that the working group will consider in scope. I'm baffled, and fortunately I have a 6 o'clock meeting I have to go to.
Relaying the comments entering the chat room 10 minutes ago, so it's a bit stale. From Tom Taylor, he says, Greg was emphasizing the need for multi-endpoint OEM at IP level. I was concerned that the defect detection at the IP layer requires monitoring of delay and loss rates.
Jeff, so I'm going to cover a number of sort of loosely related things. Your summary of the participants in the system, what kinds of things you can do, those charts, is useful. They're a little bit low focused on the layer 2 type technologies. That makes sense. They're well specified. That helps. I think that is to some extent clouding your vision in terms of the picture you should be looking at. To give an example, you are in many of the documents that are currently published basing things on like CFM type terminologies, which again makes sense. They are well specified. But as an example, it constrains your thinking about maintenance domains. Maintenance domains, in those technologies are, I think, a little small world for what IETF technologies tend to cover. Because if you look at what is the biggest maintenance domain that tends to be specified in these technologies, it's basically a pair of service providers. IETF is potentially chains of interdomain service providers that we're trying to do OAM on. And please let me make a few points, Greg, and then I'm happy to see the mic.
I'll just take my.
Okay. So, so that is one point I'd like to make, is that my suggestion is, well, starting with the lower layer text and their analysis is a good way to start thinking. Don't constrain yourself to that. Make sure to think bigger from the day one. The second thing I would say is that you should be covering a little bit more of the details of the existing IETF technologies, as Greg had pointed out. Part of the problem we have here is that IETF technologies have not been designed with OAM built in from day one as other techs have. It's just a legacy of the IETF. So we have technologies that are usable for some components of OAM, but it's not quite the same thing. You need to make sure those, you have a start to how they're listed. That's good. One of the pieces that is missing, this is my third point, and I'll see the mic after this, is that in order to do OAM in the context of what Lime is trying to drive, you need to be able to discover the endpoints of testing, regardless of which layer is there, which means that you have to have tie-ins to other technologies, whether it's topology databases, routing databases, et cetera, things that we have, to figure out what is the addressable entity to run a test at, and how, and at that point, enumerate, once you've discovered the component, what the tests are that you can do, and at that point, you now have the start of a model of saying, if I want to test this, and I know what to test, I know where it is, here is my API or protocol that I'm going to use to cause the test to happen.
Greg Mirsky Erickson. Couple of things that I wanted to note, Jeff. Thank you. It's very interesting because it's interesting perspective. So if we talk about this model that is CFM 1731 MPL STP trail that has explicit notion of maintenance domain. So the maintenance domain can have multiple providers. So what it has layers. So layers can give you different scope within the same domain. The thing is that this is not part of IP or IP MPLS OAM model, and that's a big thing that I have concern with, that how to correlate that implicit versus explicit. And that's what we had a discussion in our design team, that whether we can bridge this difference, or maybe we need, and that's what we talked about, and that's what we are asking the working group to work with us and think about it, is do we need to build explicit IP OAM data model that will have explicit domains and layers and map identities, and then it will be more, so basically build IP OAM model in similar to what we have in CFM and the rest. And then we can generalize, or at least build something, data model, and data model for their OEM entities. So, and then after that, after we build their OEM model, then we can start working about the layers and do the correlation discovery and their exercising of their OEM functions, whether it's proactive or on demand. And that's something that Chin suggested, and what we are entertaining is that the other thing might be either it will be a part of this exercise in our effort, or it might be what we can only do is defect characterization, consistent across different data planes. Because then this addressing and whether it belongs in a certain management maintenance domain or it's just characterized by IP address, it becomes technology specific and can be hidden in a container under some localization name. Okay, so that's something that we're really discussing very intensely, and we don't have a conclusion on that. Okay.
So we're saying roughly the same thing.
Yes.
What I'm encouraging the group is that, specifically the design team, is as you think of these things, you're right. The largest maintenance domain that are available in the existing mechanisms is potentially multiple providers. But when you start looking at what IP is being used for, especially cases where you have layers, and our layers in IETF tend to be tunnels, whether IP on top of IP on top of MPLS, or potentially stacked MPLS tunnels that are being assembled, RSVP with LDP on edges with GRE, encapsulating on top of that with some, potentially TDM writing over that. If you pick some of the joke T-shirts of gigantic stacks of stuff that we've seen over the years, that is the kind of thing that is really the sort of challenge that you have. Is the largest maintenance domains that those technologies suggest to you potentially are very small by comparison to the messes that customers really build for themselves. And I'm not saying that you don't want to use these things as a reference point to talk about them, but they're very small, I think, for what the big problem is. And if you spend too much time worrying about existing terminology, worrying about what is considered maintenance domain for purposes of layer 2 technologies, and don't start thinking, what do you call the next bigger thing that is an IP thing that rides on top of sets of these things? You potentially trap yourself into the point of trying to build something that is trying to do OAM at something that's too small. You'll eventually want to discover that once you've gotten a certain level of testing done. So if you've gotten 2 layers of your LSP down and you've discovered that that's where your problem is, at some point there, a further topology discovery model for your MPLS may suggest to you that there is a layer 1 optical element that you want to retrieve some stats from. That's great. But first you have to figure out how to talk to the top level component and all the service level components that it's writing on top of. So you need to build out your vocabulary bigger than what's been given to you. You need to use that to be able to say, what am I going to address?
Okay, if I could cut off the mic just a second. We're running a little bit short on time. We only have 20 minutes left. I'd like you to finish your presentation, and then we'll talk about next steps a bit. But before we go there, does anybody have not signed the blue sheets yet? Do we know where the blue sheets are? Okay, good. Okay, if you could finish the presentation. I think you have one more slide.
Yeah. Actually, we draw the conclusion. Actually, we agree the commonality between the MPL, SOM, PLM, PMD. I think the bottom line is for the IP layer, line model, configuration model doesn't need to be supported. But the IP layer can using the line model to provide the consistent reporting and representation. We think there is some reference concerns when we discuss with Greg. And next is we document some disagreement. I think we have already discussed, so I don't need to go to the last page. Yeah.
Okay. We can either open up the mic for more comments or talk about the next steps of the working group. Any more comments on the president? Yes.
Sorry,
microphone.
I'm from NetCorrector, new to the group, so I don't know the charter word by word, but I think the next step should be something about requirements, not data model. There's tons of groups doing data model already.
I tend to agree. I was about to say something about that. So I guess we've opened up the part about next steps. So if you want, you can have a seat, or you can stay standing if you like, if you want to chime in.
I think the requirements is very clear in the charter. We just want to provide a consistent reporting configuration representation. I think that this is the only requirement we
Okay,
achieve.
so maybe you can do gap analysis with current data models and provide recommendation to them. This is what lacking in your model, that will not satisfy our use case, our test case, something like that. Yeah. Usually people jump to solution too quick, and nobody needs that. Nobody needs solutions. They need problem statement, requirement, best practice. They care about what's not working. They don't care about what the right solution is. Too many data models and all conflicting and all has problems. So at this point, I don't think we need that.
Benoit?
No. Too many data models.
Okay, we hear you. Okay. Benoit?
So if I try to summarize, Benoit List, if I try to summarize what you've been doing, you looked at two models to start with, ITU1 and the CFM1. Now you came to the conclusion that you had somehow the same technology, right? You came to the conclusion that you had the same components, right? So do I understand that basically it doesn't matter which one you select, that you're going to have something consistent regardless? Is this the conclusion?
Yeah, I think based we identify, I think after 7.2, 7.6 provide a common functionality. Also, we based on our analysis, we think they have some common elements. They actually we can summarize this kind of information into the common template, just like fault domain, test point, addressing, and technology type, RPC. I think these are all the common elements when we compare CFM model and Y.7.2.31. So I'm not sure we should repeat it to do the survey.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I remember in the design team mailing list, somebody proposing that you could be model agnostic.
Yeah.
And I think that was that the final consensus of the group?
Yeah, I think line model actually is the abstract generic model. Actually, we are using this model to map it into the different layer. So I think it should be developed as a model agnostic.
What does it mean, model agnostic? It means, if I understand this, that whatever ITU or CFM, it doesn't matter because they have the same elements. Is this what you mean by model agnostic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Same elements, slightly different names.
So basically the next step is what? That you're going to work on this Yang model and that you're going to use those common components and technology and just do the Yang model?
Yeah, that's what I suggest. I think we have enough sufficient common elements to start work on. And if you have any identify any new common elements, we can address this in basic data model. I think.
All right. So the next question then, in terms of next steps. So in the first meeting last time, there was like the draft from TISA that was using CFM. There was some pushback on the terminology, right? So now you're telling me that terminology is the same, whatever model we choose. So is this like the next logical thing you're going to use, or is?
I think we are using CFM-like model. We try to make it more generic. We remove technology-specific information out. So,
okay. I think that I do have different opinion on applicability of what we call as a TISA proposal and model to IP and IP MPLS LDP-based networks. So what I was told that there will be a new document with some changes, and then probably we can say whether it's applicable or not.
All right, very good. So what I'm trying to extract from the group here is, okay, what is missing, and whether the design team has done his job, and we have to thank the design team, right? That's what I'm trying to extract.
If I could weigh in here as an individual contributor this time, there are two next steps that I say. The first is that there was troubling confusion about what the working group is doing and what it isn't doing, and what it's modeling and what it's not modeling, and even how these Yang models are used. There was a very enlightening conversation between Greg Mirsky and Jeff Haas. It would be great if that conversation could be captured in a 5-page informational draft so we have clarity about what we're doing. The second thing, which I think is enough to finish what the working group is doing, is to complete the Yang model that we just agreed we needed. Now, the issue here is we received email from Tissa a while back saying that his job responsibilities have changed and he's well, I'll confirm with Tissa, but I don't know if he's still engaged in the project. So we may need to find a new editor. We may need to do some massive rework. But I think the two work items ahead of us are, first, a very short draft about how this Yang model is used, and then finish the Yang model. Does anybody agree with that? Or does anybody disagree?
So for TISA point, TISA has asked me to continue this work. So I would be...
Your name?
Deepak Kumar, Cisco. So I would be... so based on our discussion and comments from the mailing list, we already got enough comments and also discussion with Greg. We would want to make that model more agnostic and means use but still use the terminology that is well known. Means, but those can be suited for IP. So that what we are doing, and we'll get it reviewed with Greg, for conclusion for that. Second thing is, second comment we got is that this line model should be a superset of all the IETF technology, whereas the initial Yang model is not actually a superset of our IETF technology. So that would be the second work we might have to do.
And I see lots of people lining up. Next.
Yes, Sharon, the very broad one. Question I have, we already have some Yang models for BHD and other OEMs in IETF. Then what happens to those? Will you deprecate those, or this will replace those?
Nobo.
Nobo, speaking as BFD chair. So the BFD has design team to develop the Yang. The intention has always been, if the line produces a certain model to be used, then whatever the work that the design team does will be morphed to comply with that.
So, Benoit Claes, so I'm happy, Ron, that you concluded that you need an informational RFC on how to use this Yang model, because the deliverable, the charter says, applicability document.
Yeah.
So this is a good conclusion.
I read the charter.
Greg Mirsky, Ericsson. I just wanted to say, I think that line model would not be superset in terms of it has to determine everything, and everything has to be congruent. So there would be some technology-specific containers. And what we're trying to do is, at least what I saw as a task, one of the tasks in front of the design team is define the common set of functionalities and see whether the set is sufficient enough to have it expressed in a common model.
A couple comments from Jabber. First one is from Carlos Ignatro, says, I agree with both of Ron's points. And from Tom Taylor, I can help with a short draft for share.
Okay. So let's see. The design team, I believe, is complete. Now, the two work items we have before us, one is that applicability statement, and I don't believe we had a candidate for that the last time we met, did we? We did not. So, slight reorganization, we lost. Wow, I wonder how that came up. Oh, that's in your slide. Okay. We didn't have a candidate for that applicability statement. The conversation seemed to be between Greg and Jeff, and Jeff wisely left the room. Jeff, Greg has been sentenced to produce, if we sentenced you, would you produce a? Jeff left. He knew when to leave the room.
No, he was volunteer. I'll talk with him.
Okay. Next, is everyone happy with, it was, I'm sorry, I need to hear a name 3 times before I remember it. He left the room too. The fellow who offered to take up Tiss's work. Deepak. Oh, you just moved, okay. Would you be willing to rev that draft, taking the advice that you heard in the room today about what we will model, what we won't model, how we'll deal with extensibility for individual OAM mechanisms, things like that?
Yeah, already working on it. One thing from working group we would want is we are, based on the comments, we are bringing in performance based on those common slide that we saw, common functions. We are bringing in performance to the model. So if I think let's first produce the draft, and we will like to get comments on it. So, or if there is something we are missing from those slides, which should be included, that bit is also would be very useful, because we try to generalize the terms as base, but we have only these set of OM we are looking.
Okay, so we've very tightly scoped the working group. It has exactly 2 things to do, the applicability statement and the Yang model. Does everybody agree? Does anyone have any other business? Our AD is coming to the microphone.
Right, Benoit speaking. So you've got actually a 3rd deliverable in the charter.
Uh-oh, I guess I forgot the charter.
It's an architecture for OAM that can be used as guidance for the other IETF working group.
Ah.
So, I understand the phase approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if this has to come a bit later, that's fine, but let's not forget this.
Yeah, we haven't even thought about that addressing.
Fair enough.
Okay.
So, Sharon, the very broad one. One question I have. How about the interaction between these OEM layers? For example, OEM in one layer fails, we want to report to other layer, AIS, RDI, I don't know. We have message mapping, RFCs, we have,
Oh, you just woke up, Greg.
Yeah, as I mentioned, the design team discussed it, and it's defect characterization and reporting. So, yeah, there is one of objectives that will be looked at.
So even in current Yang model, we had tried to tie in different layers. But again, if it's a single layer, it's just a single layer. But if there is for example, a tunnel is being formed, and then there is an underlay, and if you can, it's more of an operational. If those functions are available to operators, you can definitely go down to your client layer or go up to your server layer also. So that would be our goal, to make it usable in that form.
One more thing, Sharon Devary again. How about the protection switching? Are we also going to take care of because the protection switching between layers, they also have to be coordinated.
Protection switching coordination is part of OAM. Protection switching is not.
No, the coordination.
Yes. Yeah, when we talk about OAM, it's not only ping and trace route. It is performance measurement, fault management, and fault management includes protection switchover and alarm suppression and everything.
Okay, so with that said, what I'm hoping for the next meeting is a first cut at the applicability statement, an update, there you are, an update on TISA's document, and if we could have that well before the next IETF, it'd be great if we had some conversation on the mailing list about both. But at least now I think the working group has a bit more focus. Thank you very much to the design team, to everybody on it, Kim, Greg, especially Tom Taylor, if you're listening out there. Thank you all, and I think it's time for beer. The drink, not the protocol. Yeah, it's time for that kind of beer tomorrow. I know what this is. Has anyone dropped this mysterious device?
Yes, I found this device before. I have no idea.
Do you have any idea what this mysterious device is?
It looks like,
You push it and it shows you a flower.
yeah, it's a token.
Cool. It'll tell me what time it is. And it gives you numbers. And a flower. I'll give it to the people at the desk. And by the way, does anybody have the blue sheets? Blue sheets?
So it was a few minutes late, but I still caught 90% of the
Okay.
session in the minutes.
If you can mail it to me?
Yeah, I will check the start of the audio just to make sure I didn't miss any singing.
Okay. Thank you very much.
there's some work has to be done on the controller or client services or these kinds of. Okay. Okay. This, especially for the Netcom, there are problem of long running commands. It's very key problem. One of the huge problems I'm having to be a author of those MPLS OSTP Gen 1. And there we already started a discussion of how the results of LSTP will get to their internet player. It could be client there or it could be someone. Actually, there are a couple of proposals. So it's like you do polling, you use some new mechanism of box up, or actually what